Ever get the feeling like we're kind of, living through a history class come to life?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Well, hold on to your hats, folks, because today we're diving into a piece that's comparing the Jacksonian era, like way back with Andrew Jackson,
Right.
to modern American politics,
Ooh, interesting.
and specifically focusing on Donald Trump.
Oh, okay, this will be good.
It's wild, right?
Yeah.
By the end of this deep dive, you'll have a totally new way of looking at all these economic debates flying around.
Yeah.
And maybe even see, history repeating itself a little bit.
I'm ready.
All right, so the source material we're looking at today is an excerpt from a podcast called The Reckoning.
Okay.
But here's the thing. It's dated July 4th, 2030.
Whoa, the future.
I know, right? So they're looking back at our time and asking this big question. Can the U.S. achieve sustainable economic growth
Sustainable, yeah.
while also keeping its finances,
Yeah.
under control?
It's a good question.
It is, isn't it?
Yep.
It's kind of like they're looking back at like 2020 hindsight.
Yeah, very cool perspective.
Yeah. And this excerpt jumps right in, drawing these parallels between Andrew Jackson and Donald Trump.
Okay.
Both of them, of course, elected on promises to fight for the common man.
Right.
Jackson was all about expanding voting rights and taking down the national bank,
Yeah.
which he saw as this big, elitist institution.
Interesting. It's interesting to think about the economic context that was going on then and kind of compare it to now.
Oh, absolutely.
The source actually highlights three main economic problems
Okay.
that were kind of brewing in both Jackson's time and, more recently.
Right, lay it on me.
So first, you have a ballooning debt to GDP ratio.
Oh, yeah, that sounds familiar.
Right.
Yep.
Second, you've got productivity hitting the skids.
Oh.
Things are slowing down.
Right.
And then the third thing is you have more and more people wanting government services.
Yeah, of course.
Which, of course, costs money.
Right.
Does that sound kind of familiar?
Totally, yeah. And let's face it, a high debt to GDP ratio, it's not just like a scary phrase economists throw around.
Right.
It can have real consequences for people.
Oh, absolutely.
We're talking, potential tax hikes down the line,
Uh-huh.
or maybe cuts to programs that people really rely on.
Yeah.
It's this giant economic balancing act, really.
Yeah, it is. And it's interesting to see how, in this context, the source talks about the forgotten men and women.
Oh, yeah, that's a powerful phrase.
It is. And both Jackson and Trump really tapped into this feeling,
Oh,
of economic anxiety. They promised to shake things up, didn't they?
They did, yeah. Okay, so we're seeing this shared sort of populist vibe.
Yeah.
But it wasn't all just, campaign slogans with Jackson.
Yeah.
He really did shake things up, like dismantling the national bank. What could that kind of disruptive approach look like in Trump's era, especially when it comes to the economy?
Well, think about the impact Jackson's move had on the whole financial system back then. It was huge.
Right.
And so much debate. Could we see echoes of that maybe in how Trump approached things like trade deals or regulations? It's not about saying, whether it's good or bad,
Right.
but just recognizing those potential, parallels.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It makes you wonder, was there pushback against Jackson's populism back then?
Well, for sure.
You know?
There were definitely critics of his methods, even if a lot of people agreed with his intentions.
Right, right.
It just shows you that history, it rarely gives us these easy answers.
Never black and white, is it?
No.
And the source keeps things really interesting by not actually revealing whether Trump ultimately succeeds in, tackling all these big economic issues.
Right.
It's more about making us, think critically about how these historical parallels might play out.
And that's what makes this deep dive so interesting, really.
Yeah.
It's not just about the past. It's about trying to understand how those patterns might come back, maybe in different ways.
Exactly. So we've gone from, Jacksonian America to the age of Trump, and even gotten this glimpse into how the future might view these times. But the question remains, does the comparison really between Jackson and Trump hold up over time? Are there other historical figures, or movements that might shed light on this economic and political roller coaster we seem to be on today?
Right. It's a lot to consider.
It is. And if thinking about this future perspective has you intrigued, want to learn more, you can check out The Reckoning podcast.
Okay.
It's at www.thereckoning2030.com.
I'll check it out.
Their tagline is balanced, informed, pragmatic.
Catchy.
Right. I feel like that's a pretty good approach to these complex times we're living in.
Yeah, it is.
Until next time, folks, keep those thinking caps on. And who knows, maybe we'll have a time machine by our next deep dive.
That would be amazing.
Wouldn't it?